My stepsister humiliated me to look good for her billionaire date at Easter. But he left with me instead when he found out I'm the investor who funded his entire empire. Your support is everything to us. Please subscribe, and while you're at it, tell us where you're watching from. We love connecting with you all. I should have known Easter dinner would be a disaster the moment Kendall texted me. Wear something plain. My date's a billionaire and I need to shine. My stepsister had always been competitive, but this was next-level audacity. I stared at my phone in my penthouse office, 20 floors above downtown Atlanta, surrounded by monitors displaying my investment portfolio worth $847 million. Kendall had no idea who I really was. Nobody in my family did. To them, I was just Zoe, the quiet stepdaughter who worked in finance and kept to herself after Dad married Diane 5 years ago. I'd let them believe I was some mid-level analyst living modestly. The truth? I was Z Monroe, the anonymous venture capitalist whose firm had funded half of Silicon Valley's hottest startups. You still coming tomorrow? Kendall's follow-up text appeared. Henry Hayes is coming. The Henry Hayes. Don't embarrass me. My breath caught. Henry Hayes. I knew that name intimately. 3 years ago, his tech company was hemorrhaging money, days from bankruptcy. He'd pitched to my firm desperately, and something in his presentation, the raw innovation, the genuine passion, made me invest $50 million through shell companies. His empire, now valued at $3.2 billion, started with my money. And he had no idea. I'll be there, I texted back, a plan forming. I'd endured Kendall's condescension for years. The helpful comments about my simple lifestyle. The pitying looks when I wore off-the-rack clothes to family dinners. The way she'd steal my accomplishments and present them as her own to her socialite friends. Tomorrow everything would change. I opened my closet, bypassing the designer labels, and pulled out something deliberately ordinary. Let her think she'd won. For now. Easter morning arrived with Georgia sunshine streaming through my windows. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A plain blue dress from Target, minimal makeup, hair in a simple ponytail. The Cartier watch stayed in the safe. The Louboutins remained boxed. I looked exactly like what Kendall wanted. Forgettable. My phone buzzed. Running late. Let Henry in when he arrives. And Zoe? Please don't mention your boring finance job. I told him you're a secretary. A secretary. I screenshot the message for later. Dad's house in Buckhead was already bustling when I arrived at noon. Diane air-kissed my cheeks, her eyes scanning my outfit with barely concealed disapproval. Oh, Zoe. That's sweet. Very humble. That's our Zoe, Dad chuckled, oblivious. Never cared about fancy things. If only he knew the fancy things I bought startups with. Kendall emerged from upstairs like a vision. A white designer dress that probably cost $5,000, professionally styled hair, makeup flawless. She looked at me and smirked. Perfect. You look exactly like you should. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. That's him. Kendall hissed, shoving me toward the door. You answer it. Show him you're the help. My hand trembled slightly as I opened the door. And there he was. Henry Hayes was taller than his photos suggested, with warm brown skin, intelligent eyes, and a smile that seemed genuine. He wore an impeccably tailored navy suit that screamed money but not arrogance. Hello, he said warmly. I'm Henry. You must be the help. Kendall's voice cut in as she glided forward, inserting herself between us. This is just Zoe. My stepsister. She's nobody important. Henry's smile faltered for a microsecond, his eyes flicking to me with something like confusion. Or was it recognition? Impossible. We'd never met. All our correspondence had been through my lawyers and his team. I'd watched his presentations via video. He'd never seen my face. Actually, Henry started, but Kendall linked her arm through his. Come meet my parents. Daddy's been dying to meet you. She pulled him away, leaving me holding the door like the servant she'd positioned me as. I closed it slowly, catching Dad's uncomfortable expression. He knew this was wrong, but he'd never contradicted Diane or Kendall. 5 years of choosing his new family over defending me had taught me exactly where I stood. Dinner was excruciating. Kendall had positioned herself beside Henry, monopolizing every conversation. I was relegated to the table's end, near Diane's sister Carol, who spent 20 minutes explaining her Yorkie's digestive issues. So Henry, Kendall purred, touching his arm, tell everyone about your latest acquisition. The AI company. Neuralink, Henry confirmed, and I tensed. That was mine too. Another $30 million I'd funneled through intermediaries last year. We're expanding into medical diagnostics. The technology could revolutionize early disease detection. Fascinating, Kendall breathed, though I'd bet my portfolio she couldn't explain AI if her life depended on it. You're so brilliant. Building an empire from nothing. Not from nothing, Henry said carefully. I had investors who believed in me when no one else would. Particularly one investor who probably expects major returns, Kendall interrupted with a practiced laugh. That's business, right? Cold and transactional. Henry's jaw tightened. Actually, this particular investor never demanded board seats or creative control. Just believed in the vision. His eyes found mine across the table. Held them. My heart hammered. Could he possibly? Zoe. Diane's sharp voice broke the moment. Stop staring and help me clear the appetizers. The kitchen felt like a sanctuary compared to the performative nightmare in the dining room. I scraped plates mechanically, trying to process the way Henry had looked at me. Like he was solving a puzzle. Kendall swept in, her designer heels clicking against the tile. You're doing great out there, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Really embracing your role. I roll? I asked quietly, my hands stilling on a plate. Come on, Zoe. We both know how this works. She leaned against the counter, examining her perfect manicure. I'm the star. You're the supporting character. You've always been fine with that arrangement. Have I? She laughed, a brittle sound. Please. You've never fought back once. Remember when I told everyone that marketing campaign idea was mine? The one that got me promoted? You designed the whole thing and you just let me take it. That had been a test. I'd wanted to see if she'd come clean. She never did. She'd accepted the recognition, the bonus, the praise, all built on my work. Why do you do this? I asked, genuinely curious now. What did I ever do to you? Kendall's expression hardened. You existed. You showed up with your dad and your sad little backstory. Poor Zoe, whose mom died, who needed a new family, and everyone felt sorry for you. Do you know what it's like to suddenly compete for your own mother's attention? I never asked for that. You didn't have to. You were the tragic orphan. I was just the daughter. She grabbed a wine glass, filling it to the brim. But I learned something important, Zoe. Life isn't about being nice or genuine. It's about winning. And tonight, I'm winning Henry Hayes. What if he's not a prize to be won? Everyone's a prize to someone with the right strategy. She drained half the glass. Now get back out there and serve dessert. I need you visible, being. It makes me look better by comparison. I carried the pecan pie to the dining room, my hands steady despite the fury burning in my chest. This wasn't just about tonight. This was 5 years of calculated cruelty, of being positioned as less than, of watching my family embrace Kendall's fiction while I remained invisible by choice. But I'd chosen invisibility for protection, To build my empire without interference. Kendall had weaponized it. Pie. Diane announced unnecessarily. Zoe made it. Baking is really her only talent. I'd bought the pie from a bakery on Peachtree, but sure. Henry's eyes tracked me as I served slices. When I reached his plate, he spoke quietly, meant only for me. Earlier you tensed when I mentioned Neuralink's medical diagnostics. Why? My hand jerked slightly. I must have misheard. You didn't. His voice was thoughtful, probing. You knew exactly what I was talking about. Most people's eyes glaze over when I discuss AI applications. Yours lit up. Kendall materialized at his shoulder. Henry, ignore her. Zoe barely graduated community college. She doesn't understand business. She turned to me with poisonous sweetness. No offense, sis. Every word was a lie. I had an MBA from Wharton, graduated top of my class. But I'd kept that hidden too, using a different name, building my fortune while Kendall thought I was struggling. Actually, Henry said, his tone cooling toward Kendall, understanding doesn't require specific degrees. Some of the sharpest minds I've encountered never went to prestigious schools. How democratic of you, Kendall said, her smile strained. She shot me a warning glare. Zoe, didn't you need to check on something in the kitchen? No, I said simply, taking my seat at the table's end. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. I never said no. Excuse me. I said no. I'm going to eat my pie now. The silence that fell over the table was delicious. As I ate my pie, slowly, deliberately, my mind drifted to 3 years ago. March 2022. The month everything changed. I'd been 25, working 18-hour days at a boutique investment firm in Atlanta. My boss, Patricia Phillips, was brilliant and ruthless. She taught me to see potential where others saw risk, to trust data over emotion, to build wealth that compounded silently. You're too smart for this, she told me over coffee one morning. Working for someone else, I mean. You should start your own firm. With what capital? I'd laughed. My salary was good, but starting an investment firm required millions. Your inheritance. My mother's life insurance payout. $8 million I'd never touched, sitting in a high-yield account because spending it felt like losing her twice. Mom died when I was 17. A car accident on I-285, sudden and senseless. Dad fell apart. 2 years later he met Diane at a grief counseling group, and suddenly we were being absorbed into a new family that didn't quite want me. I can't use that money, I'd whispered. Your mother would want you to build something, Patricia said firmly. To be powerful enough that no one could ever diminish you. She'd been right. By my 26th birthday, I'd quietly founded Monroe Capital Ventures, operating under layers of LLCs and anonymous structures. My first investment, a struggling social media analytics company. I turned $500,000 into $4 million within 18 months. Then Henry Hayes's pitch landed on my desk. His company, Hayes Technologies, was revolutionary, using AI to optimize supply chains in real time. But he'd burned through his initial funding and the big venture capital firms had rejected him. Too risky. Too ambitious. I'd spent 3 days analyzing his models, his code, his vision. Then I'd called him through my legal team. Tell Mr. Hayes that Z Monroe will invest $50 million. Terms: 20% equity, no board seat, 5-year commitment. One condition: he never stops innovating. Zoe? Zoe. Kendall's shrill voice snapped me back to the present. Everyone was staring at me. Sorry, I said smoothly. Just thinking about work. Your secretary job? Kendall laughed. Must be riveting. Filing and answering phones. Henry's fork clinked against his plate. the sound sharp and the sudden tension. What firm do you work for, Zoe? The question felt loaded. His eyes held mine with an intensity that made my pulse race. A small investment firm, I said carefully. Nothing you'd have heard of. Try me. I know most of the financial players in Atlanta. Kendall's hand clamped on his arm. Henry, really? Let's talk about something interesting. Like your new yacht. Daddy, did you know Henry just bought a 90-foot yacht? I didn't buy it, Henry said, still watching me. The board insisted after the IPO. I'd rather have invested that money in the next innovation. He leaned forward slightly. What kind of investments does your firm handle, Zoe? Venture capital mostly. Tech startups, some biotech. Kendall's laugh was forced. See? She's just an assistant at some venture capital place. Probably makes copies of the real investors' documents. Is that what you do? Henry asked me directly. Make copies. The moment hung between us like a held breath. I could end this now. Reveal everything, watch Kendall's face crumble, claim my victory. But something held me back. Maybe I wanted to see how deep her betrayal would go. Maybe I wanted Henry to see who Kendall really was before I pulled back the curtain. Sometimes, I said quietly. Sometimes I make copies. Dad's face fell. He knew I was lying, protecting myself again. But he said nothing. As always. Henry's expression shifted. Disappointment? Frustration? Interesting, he said finally. And which firm is this? Henry. Diane interjected loudly. Tell us about your charity work. Kendall mentioned you're funding schools in underserved communities. His jaw tightened, but he let the subject drop. Yes. Education access is important to me. I grew up in College Park in a neighborhood where opportunity was rare, Henry continued, his voice taking on a passionate edge. My mother cleaned offices at night so I could have a computer. When I started Hayes Technologies, I promised her I'd give back. Something in his tone cracked through my carefully maintained facade. This was why I'd invested in him. Not just the brilliant technology, but the genuine desire to lift others up. That's so inspiring, Kendall gushed. You're like a modern hero. I'm not a hero. I just had help when I needed it most. He paused, his eyes distant. 3 years ago I was days from bankruptcy. Losing my mother's house, losing everything. I pitched to 17 venture capital firms. 17 rejections. My chest tightened. I'd read those rejection letters in his file. Too risky. Unproven market. Lacks business fundamentals. Then someone took a chance, Henry said softly. Someone who saw past the spreadsheets and believed in the vision. Changed my entire life. Well, thank God for whoever that was, Kendall said dismissively. But let's be honest, they invested because they knew you'd make them rich. It wasn't charity. It felt like charity when no one else would answer my emails. His voice hardened. And for the record, this investor has never cashed out. Never pressured me. Never demanded anything except that I keep building. That's not normal in venture capital. Maybe they're just bad at business, Kendall laughed. The words hit me like a slap. My entire fortune was built on strategic investments, on knowing exactly when to hold and when to fold. I turned 8 million into over 800 million in 5 years. Bad at business? Or maybe, Henry said, his tone ice, they understood that some things matter more than immediate returns. Like integrity, loyalty, vision. Those things don't pay the bills, Kendall countered. Money does. Power does. And powerful people don't stay hidden. Some do, Henry said, looking directly at me. Some people have excellent reasons for staying anonymous. The weight of his gaze felt like he was peeling back layers. seeing past the plain dress and the submissive demeanor to something more. My pulse thundered in my ears. Kendall must have sensed the shift because she stood abruptly. Dessert was lovely, but Henry and I should take a walk in the garden. The roses are blooming. Actually, Henry said, not moving, I'd like to hear more about Zoe's work. Venture capital is fascinating. She's a secretary, Kendall snapped, her composure cracking. There's nothing to hear about. Is that true? Henry asked me. Are you just a secretary, Zoe? This was it. The moment of choice. I could keep hiding, let Kendall have her perfect evening, maintain my invisible life. Or I could step into the light and claim everything I'd built. Thought of my mother. Of the insurance money she'd left, meant to protect me. I'd used it to build armor instead. A fortress of wealth that no one could see but that kept me safe. Safe from being hurt. Safe from being diminished. But safety wasn't the same as living. No, I said quietly. I'm not just a secretary. Kendall's face went white. Zoe. I run my own investment firm. Monroe Capital Ventures. The words felt like stepping off a cliff. Have for 5 years now. The silence was deafening. Monroe Capital? Henry's voice was strangled. Z. Monroe is... you? Dad's head whipped toward me. What? Zoe, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I've hidden who I am because it was easier than dealing with. I gestured around the table. This. The judgment. The competition. The constant diminishment. This is insane, Kendall said, her voice rising. She's lying. She's making this up because she's jealous. Am I? I pulled out my phone, my hands surprisingly steady. Monroe Capital Ventures. Look it up. Check the filings. I'm listed as founder and CEO under Zoe Monroe Williams. Henry already had his phone out, his fingers flying. His face went through a series of expressions. Shock, disbelief, and finally something like awe. Oh my God, he whispered. You're Z. Monroe. You're the investor who saved my company. The dining room erupted into chaos. This has to be a joke, Diane said, her voice shrill. Zoe lives in that tiny apartment. I live in a penthouse on West Peachtree, I corrected quietly. 20th floor. 3,000 square feet. The Honda you drive is in storage. I usually drive an Audi R8. It's discreet. Dad's face had gone slack with shock. 5 years? You've been... Zoe, why didn't you tell me? Because you never asked. The words came out harder than I intended. Because when you married Diane, you made it clear that keeping the peace meant I had to make myself smaller. So I did. I just made myself small where you couldn't see it. Kendall was frantically searching on her phone, her perfectly made-up face contorting with each article she found. Forbes. Business Insider. The mysterious Z. Monroe, Atlanta's invisible power player. No, this can't be real. Henry stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. He walked around the table toward me, his expression unreadable. When he reached me, he extended his hand. Miss Monroe. It's an honor to finally meet you. I took his hand. His grip was firm, warm. The honor is mine, Mr. Hayes. Your work with Hayes Technologies has exceeded every projection. The medical diagnostics division alone is revolutionary. Because you gave me room to innovate. No interference, no pressure, just belief. His voice cracked slightly. Do you know how rare that is? How much that meant? I knew what you could do, I said simply. I saw the vision. You gave me $50 million based on a vision. He laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. I've spent 3 years wondering who Z. Monroe was. Trying to figure out how to thank them properly. I imagine some old tycoon in a corner office, not what? Asked curious. Not someone my age. Not someone who looks like they're trying to disappear. His eyes softened. Why, Zoe? Why hide all this? Before I could answer, Kendall slammed her phone down. This is unbelievable. All this time you've been playing some kind of sick game? Letting me think. Letting everyone think. You were nothing. I never said I was nothing, I countered. You decided that. You needed me to be nothing to make yourself something. That's not true. Isn't it? I stood facing her fully. Every family dinner, every holiday, every single interaction you positioned me as less than. The boring one. The simple one. The one who never amounted to much. Your words, Kendall. From Thanksgiving. I was joking. You weren't. And tonight you called me the help. You told Henry the first was nobody important. I pulled out my phone, showed her the screenshot of her text. Let Henry in when he arrives. And Zoe? Please don't mention your boring finance job. I told him you're a secretary. Diane gasped. Kendall, you didn't. I was protecting her. Kendall's voice was desperate now. She doesn't understand people like Henry. I was trying to save her from embarrassment. By humiliating her first? Henry's voice was cold. By lying about her to make yourself look better? You don't understand. She's always been different. Awkward. She needed help. I needed help? I laughed, the sound bitter. Kendall, I've funded 3 of your favorite restaurants without knowing it. That boutique you shop at on Lenox? I'm a silent partner. The charity gala you chair? My foundation donated $500,000 last year. Anonymously. Her face went from red to white. You've been watching me? No. I've been living my life. A life that occasionally intersects with yours because Atlanta's business community isn't that large. I turned to Henry. I invest in potential. In people who want to build something meaningful. Your company wasn't just a good investment. It was a vision worth believing in. And you never wanted recognition, Henry said slowly, understanding dawning. That's why you stayed anonymous. Not just from me. From everyone. Recognition attracts attention. Attention invites interference. I looked at my family. And judgment. Henry studied me for a long moment and I could practically see him reassessing everything. The quiet woman at the end of the table wasn't a victim or an afterthought. She was the person who'd bet $50 million on him when 17 others had said no. I need to leave, Henry said abruptly, then looked at Kendall. This evening has been enlightening. But I don't think we're compatible. Kendall's desperation was almost painful to watch. What? Oh, Henry, wait. We had plans. The yacht trip, the gala next weekend. Plans with someone who built herself up by tearing someone else down. He shook his head. I grew up with nothing, Kendall. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be dismissed. I could never be with someone who does that to others. Especially family. But I didn't know. Kendall cried. If I'd known she was rich. That's exactly the problem, Henry interrupted. You only see value in people you think can elevate you. Zoe was never worth your respect when you thought she was ordinary. That tells me everything I need to know. He turned to me, his expression softening. Ms. Monroe, Zoe, I know this is unconventional, but would you have coffee with me? Somewhere away from here? I have about 3 years of thank yous to deliver, and apparently a lot to learn about the person who changed my life. Every eye in the room fixed on me. Dad looked stricken. Diane appeared faint. Kendall's perfectly made-up face was crumbling, mascara beginning to run. I thought about my mother again. What would she say if she could see this moment? Would she tell me to be kind, to smooth things over, to make myself small again for the sake of family peace? Or would she tell me to walk out that door with my head high, with the man who respected me for my mind and my vision, not my ability to serve pie? I'd like that, I said to Henry. I know an excellent coffee place on Ponce. Open late. He smiled, genuine and warm. Perfect. We left together, walking out of that house into the cool Atlanta night. Behind us, I heard Diane's voice rising in panic, Dad calling my name, Kendall's sobs. But I didn't turn back. Henry opened the passenger door of his Tesla, and I slid in, the leather seats a stark contrast to the hard wooden dining chair I'd occupied for hours. As he drove, the city lights streamed past, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Visible. I have a confession, Henry said as we stopped at a red light. I suspected something was different about you the moment you opened that door. The way you held yourself, there was this quiet confidence that didn't match the role Kendall was pushing you into. You have good instincts. I built a $3 billion company. I'd better. He glanced at me. Why do you really invest in me, Zoe? The real reason. I considered the question carefully. Your pitch was brilliant. The technology was sound. But what sold me was the part at the end where you talked about your mother. You said, I'm not building this to get rich. I'm building it to prove that brilliance exists everywhere, even in places people don't think to look. That resonated. Because people didn't think to look at you. Exactly. We pulled into the coffee shop parking lot. Octane on Ponce, a place I discovered years ago when I needed to think. At this hour it was nearly empty. Over lattes, Henry asked questions I'd never been asked. Not about my returns or my portfolio, but about my philosophy, my vision, what I wanted to build next. He listened like my words mattered. I mattered. I want to invest in you again, I said finally. The medical diagnostics division needs expansion capital. I think you're underestimating the market size. Henry laughed. Are you seriously talking business right now? Always. I smiled. But also, thank you. For seeing me when I was trying to be invisible. Thank you for seeing me when no one else would. He reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I know tonight was brutal. Are you okay? My family was imploding. Kendall would never forgive me. Dad would try to mediate, to smooth things over, to make me apologize for existing loudly. But I was sitting in a coffee shop with someone who valued my mind, my vision, my truth. I had a portfolio worth over $800 million and growing. I had built something my mother would be proud of. I'm better than okay, I said, meaning it. I'm finally free. And I was. Free from hiding, from diminishing myself, from pretending to be less to make others comfortable. The road ahead would be complicated. Family always is. But I'd face it as myself. Fully. Finally. Monroe wasn't invisible anymore. And that was exactly how it should be.